So let me start out by saying seasonal affective disorder has been around for a while, but the Diagnostic Statistics Manual is what psychologists use. It's essentially the psychologist's Bible. It's this really big blue book, and it has every diagnosis in it that you can think of. And recently, the APA changed SAD to be major depressive disorder with a seasonal pattern. So all that means is it just has a different name, but most people know it as SAD. It's kind of like when people on the spectrum had Asperger's, and then they changed it's an autism spectrum disorder, and that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's the same disorder, but it has a different specifier. Okay. All right. So what is seasonal affective disorder? So it's more than just what people like to think of the winter blues, right? It mimics a lot of major depressive symptomology. So you have lethargy, you may have body aches. In the winter, you might sleep more. In the summer, because people do get sad in the summer too, you might sleep less. There might be overeating or undereating. You might have an irritable mood. What other symptoms? There are also psychosomatic symptoms. And psychosomatic symptoms mean like a lot of times we as Black and brown women hold all of our stress in our bodies. So our stomachs hurt. You know, when I get stressed out, I feel very tense right here in my shoulder. We get headaches. It's not good to have a headache every day. That's signifying something's going on, right? It may seem like you're normal, but let me tell you, it's not normal. Okay? All right, so psychosomatic symptoms are your body saying, I'm feeling away, something's going on, I might be stressed, I might be sad, I might be depressed. All right? So some more signs and symptoms, let me make sure I'm getting them all. Feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness. I said lack of energy and fatigue. You also sometimes can feel hopelessness, like, is this ever going to get better? And then a really important thing to note is the things that usually make you happy are not making you happy anymore. So you have a loss of interest in things that you once enjoyed before. Now, all of those symptoms, that long list, you guys can stop me at a time if you have questions too, okay? Only have to be occurring for 14 days, 2 weeks, for you to quantify as 1, having depression, or 2, seasonal affective disorder, right? And so a lot of times, 2 weeks can fly by like that. We're not even paying attention to what's going on. It's probably usually like a month or 2 before we're like, oh, you know, somebody checks in and they're like, are you okay? You don't seem like yourself. And then you actually sit down and you're like, wait a minute, I haven't been feeling like myself. It's been a while, right? So it's important, and that's why I also want you guys to take the assessments with you. You don't have to do them today, but it's important to start making sure that you're checking in with yourself on a regular basis, getting into the habit of checking in with yourself. That is an intentional self-care, right? Okay, so that's the signs and symptoms. How is it diagnosed? Usually you go and see a doctor, like a psychologist, but you can also see a therapist. So the difference between, let me just give y'all a little quick insight on where the line of mental health professionals go, all right? Psychiatrists are at the top because they have an MD. Psychologists are right under them. They have either a PsyD or a PhD, so they have a doctorate. And they can diagnose, they can also do psychological testing and give therapy, right? The MDs are different because they can prescribe medication. And then under the psychologists are master's level therapists, right? That's your licensed clinical social workers, your licensed professional counselors, your marriage and family counselors. They don't do any psychological testing. They can diagnose depending on their certifications, and they cannot prescribe medication. Okay, so how you get diagnosed is you see a mental health professional, and what they're going to do is usually if you're starting therapy or you're going to see someone, even when you go to the physical, like a regular doctor, a PCP, personal care physician, they will ask you questions about what's going on, right? Your symptoms, right? How are you feeling? What's going on? We'll ask, how long has this been going on? Did anything happen in your life to impact these feelings? What else do we ask? The top 3 questions, yucky ones. Do you have any trauma? Are you having feelings of hurting yourself or anyone else? And are you engaging in any self-injurious behavior? So that's like picking, cutting, burning. Those are the general ones, but it can look like other things too, right? Because sometimes people are just looking for relief, so they try to help themselves any way that they can. So that's how it's generally diagnosed. Now, I have to tell you that oftentimes the word diagnosis sounds very heavy, right? I don't want to be diagnosed with depression. That means something is actually wrong, right? I don't want to be diagnosed with X, Y, and Z because that's heavy, right? But I want you to conceptualize the word diagnosis as it just gives us a guideline of what's going on, right? And unfortunately, Big Pharma has made it, not necessarily here, but if you go see a private person, a private therapist, they will have to diagnose you in the first session in order for insurance to cover the session. So that's really why we have to diagnose. And this happens if you go see a regular doctor. That's why you walk away with, this is what it is, even though it might be a common cold. They have to put down a diagnosis in order to get reimbursed by your insurance, right? So I like to do, when I'm meeting with people and I'm hearing their symptomology, it's very important for you guys to understand what's going on. What does this mean? What does this diagnosis say? Like, is it treatable? Am I doomed for life? Like, you can have a lot of questions going on, and I think it's important for you to empower yourselves to ask, like, all right, so that's, what do you think is going on, doc? And like, what do I need to do about it? Okay, makes sense? All right, so who gets sad? Me. You know what? I do too. And you know when my sad starts? Right around September. Yeah, and this year, because y'all are stressful, no, I'm just kidding. No, this year it started a little bit earlier, and I'm like, what's going on? Yeah, and I just, feel lethargic, I don't want to get out of bed, now it's dark in the morning when you get up. So millions of people get sad. It actually, surprisingly, not really surprisingly, happens more in women than it does in men. That's also true for major depression in general. What else? The winter pattern of sad occurs in more people than does summer pattern. It's more common in people who already have diagnoses. So if you have bipolar or major depression already, it's comorbid, meaning it's diagnosed at the same time. All right, so sometimes with any mood disorders, so the mood disorders are like depression, bipolar disorder, what else is a mood disorder? Any of the anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety disorder, those have a genetic component, meaning that sometimes you'll see in an intake the clinician will ask you, hey, is there anybody else in your family that has mental health diagnoses, or do you know if they do? I know oftentimes in our community we don't talk about these things, right? It's just crazy auntie, crazy uncle, but there's probably something going on there, and unfortunately it trickles down the line. That doesn't mean you will get it, but sometimes there is already a predisposition, meaning it's kind of already there. And that's like any other health disorder too. Like if your parents have high blood pressure or high cholesterol, then there's more of a likelihood that you might have that too. Okay? This is another reason why you gotta be taking care of yourself and going to the doctor and checking in to see what's going on. All right. Causes. What causes SAD? They don't actually know for sure. All they know is that the change in the light, the shorter days, that really impacts people, especially with the winter pattern. So depression is they do know that depression is impacted by serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter in your brain that controls your mood. And so with depression, there is a lack of serotonin or low levels of serotonin. And then when there's not a lot of sun out, winter, it's darker, the days are shorter, there's also a lower level of vitamin D. So some people with vitamin D deficiency, meaning they're not getting enough, that could also cause the SAD component, which is where the light therapy comes in, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Let's see. SAD also is impacted by different levels of melatonin. So we already have melatonin in our bodies, and melatonin kind of regulates when we go to sleep, when we get up. That's why if you're having trouble going to sleep, the first thing someone will say is, oh, you should take some melatonin. You might not have enough, right? Also, something else that can help you sleep is magnesium, and that also helps regulate mood too. These are all vitamins, and this is with the disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor, but these are some things that can help you regulate your sleep and how you're feeling naturally. Obviously, you can get them at CVS or anything like that. All right, what other causes? Let's see. In contrast, people with summer patterns, SAD, have reduced melatonin levels, meaning like they aren't getting enough sleep, and because there are longer days, they may experience depression and sleep disruptions. So that's more what the summer pattern looks like. Let's see, what other causes? Obviously, the way that we think about the seasons can impact whether or not you have SAD. And even though it doesn't really talk about, the research doesn't necessarily talk about this, winter comes with holidays. Holidays can be stressful, right? Because you guys are in college, you go back home, I don't know what the family dynamics are like, but sometimes that can be stressful, right? Especially as you guys are emerging adults. So what that means is your role in the family is changing, right? Your parents or whoever raised you still trying to run the show. You have some independence. You don't always live there. You're no longer at the kid table, but they don't always want to go with that either, right? So those dynamics, I think, really play a part into how we feel around this season, right? I also think, not to be morbid, but in the fall, things are dying. The leaves are falling off, it's very colorful at first, but then guess what? There's nothing on the trees. It's dead, it's gone, there's nothing, no color, no nada. So like that to me, seems very depressing. Not to be dramatic, but I think that has to do with it, right? All right, so we talked about what SAD is, who develops SAD, what causes SAD. Let's see, what else should we talk about? How is it treated, right? So, how they figure out how to treat things is they do a lot of research. And in the research is what they call clinical trials. So they'll say, oh, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, like even now on social media, they'll be like, if you have da 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 da, you know, try this, you know, come join our research clinical trial, right? And so that's so that they can figure out if this medicine works, if that medicine works, if this treatment works. So they do a lot of that sort of thing to test and see what works and what doesn't. And so the gold standard for something like SAD is going to be light therapy, which essentially is this light that you sit in front of you, and it's just like a UV light. And you sit in front of it for, I think it's about 20 to 30 minutes a day. And it's supposed to help you feel a little bit better. And then psychotherapy, obviously talking to a mental health professional about your stressors, about how you feel, and antidepressant medication. So antidepressant medication, typically they're going to give you an SSRI, which is I don't need to tell you all that because you'll probably forget, but basically it's to help raise those serotonin levels so you feel better, right? The thing with SSRIs is they take about 4 to 6 weeks before you experience the therapeutic effects. Meaning, you're taking it for like a month and a half before you feel anything. First 3 weeks, you're gonna feel side effects, if there's gonna be any. But you don't necessarily know if it's gonna make you feel better because everybody has a different body chemistry, right? And there's probably 20 different antidepressants, right? And so the doctor is gonna start you on a very low dosage with this antidepressant. And they're gonna say, let's try this. It is literally trial and error to see if this medication helps. You might say after 2 months, I don't feel anything. So what they do, they'll bump you up. And then you have to wait another month. And then you're like, bro, I'm still sad. Literally still sad. And then they're like, well, all right, let's try you on a different one. All of these steps, generally, most of the time, based on my experience, psychiatrists don't tell you this part. Don't tell you that it's trial and error. Don't tell you that we gotta try something, see if it works, see if it sticks, essentially, and try something else. So you go in there thinking you're gonna take this pill, it's gonna make you feel better, and you're good, right? That's not how it works at all. Sometimes, magically, you get that one pill and it helps, and you don't have to go through all that, but that is a rarity, okay? So, and then we talked about vitamin D, taking vitamin D supplements. They don't have magnesium on here, but that also can help people with SAD, okay? I'm trying to think of anything else. That's pretty much the gold standard. There aren't any specific treatments for SAD with the summer pattern, right? I don't think they've done as much research on that, and as well as I don't think there's as many people who suffer from the summer pattern, of SAD, okay? Now, if you're wondering, oh, she mentioned winter blues in the beginning. What's the difference between winter blues and seasonal affective disorder? So the difference is intensity, frequency, and duration, right? So when a clinician is asking you about your symptoms, they're gonna ask you how long, how often, and how bad. That's what that means, right? And so those questions determine whether it's just kind of, I don't want to say just because that sounds very invalidating, but whether it's winter blues or essentially major depression. And those are the three main questions, but all those symptoms that I noted that we think about, that you tell that you're going through, will also determine which pocket you're in, all right? And so when you guys leave, take both of them so you can kind of look at it and see the difference, all right? Okay, questions? I talked probably pretty fast, huh? Too fast, sorry. Oh, I didn't answer, how can it be prevented? They don't know. Pretty much, basically, what they said is, if you know you have SAD, pretty much it's probably gonna come every year, right? And so start the treatment early, right? If you know you start to get SAD, like me in September, maybe you wanna take an antidepressant, or you start on the light therapy early, or you make sure you're in therapy, right? That's basically what they think about how to prevent it. Yes?
Well, let's say like you have friends who are going through like SAD and seasonal depression, like how would you go about like helping them like navigate through it, feel better, help decrease the symptoms a bit, that kind of jazz?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you want to help your friend who has SAD, but you're not sure how to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably one of the best things to do is to make sure they're aware of their resources.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy this work here at Howard. So many of you guys, not necessarily you, but students, don't know about the counseling service. Free therapy, right? And so how you would help someone who has SAD is, first of all, letting them know their resources. I think second of all, the thing is asking them how you might support them. If you know if you're pretty sure it's SAD, maybe you have to get them out too. Like, hey, come hang out with me. I know you're not feeling great, but come outside for a minute. It's about to get cold, so maybe not outside, but you know what I mean, right? And maybe, spending time with people can help, but sometimes when people don't feel good, they want to be left alone, right? And so sometimes you gotta say, hey, I'm here to support you. Here's how you contact me. Here's, if you text me, Red, I know that I need to come or call you right away, but otherwise, I'm gonna give you your space. So know and understand that you can help your friend, but you're not their clinician. So you can, and even a clinician can only help someone as much as they want to be helped. And it's okay if that person doesn't know what they need. They might say, I don't know how you can help, right? And you'll say, okay, well maybe we can figure it out together, right? And then you can give them some suggestions of like what you do to help yourself feel better, and kind of go from there. But I would really steer heavily on directing them to their resources, right? So the resources are gonna be here, it's gonna be like the counseling service. We also have a crisis line, and 988 is always a resource. You don't have to be suicidal to use 988. Sometimes it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, you need someone to talk to, they will answer. And then crisis text as well. And then they're like, we, the counseling service on our social media, post a lot of uplifting things, so videos, positive affirmations, that kind of thing. You can also direct them to that. Okay. I didn't put it out there, and I'll make sure you guys have it, but we have a QR code that has treatment resources attached to it, right? And so you can give that to your friends too. Okay. All right. Other questions?
If y'all don't have any questions for